Hello and welcome to Avaya Stadium and another edition of Black and Azul, a very special post-game edition right here after the fourth round of the U.S. Open Cup. My name is Charles Wollin. Welcome back, Joel Soria. How was your trip?
It was great. I'm excited to be here. Our first time at Avaya Stadium. An exciting game from start to finish between the Quakes and a Northern California rival in Sac Republic. Sac Republic showed up. They showed up quickly. They stunned the home crowd early on, but they weren't able to hold on to it. Obviously, the Quakes were a high-powered team, not really lacking too much star power, and they were able to pull it through at the end, winning 4-2 convincingly.
Yeah, Vaco really with a good second half of this Quakes side, kind of putting them over the line. The substitution, there was a few changes in the back line to make that happen. He comes in as the attacking midfield player and scores in the 78th minute and the 90th minute. Sacramento Republic scoring in the 90th minute, maybe about a minute or two of kind of heavy cup tie drama, if you will. But for me, Vaco stands out as the difference maker to put this Quakes team over the line because it was quite even in the first half.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. They were going toe-to-toe in the first half, and maybe it was my tweet that I sent out last night that got Vaco really just coming out of his shell. He showed up. The first goal was a deflection off of the Sac Republic right back, but the second goal was from a brilliant pass from Chris Wondolowski, and the Georgian made no mistake. He finished inside of the box calmly, cool, collectively with the outside of his right foot. The Quakes go on to win, and now they're in the fifth round, which is going to be taking place next week.
For Sacramento Republic, that is their third game against the San Jose Earthquakes. All three of them, they had the lead in those games, and all three of them, they ended up losing against the San Jose Earthquakes team. And I got a chance to kind of jostle a little bit with some of the media guys downstairs, etc. But that is a kind of an interesting statistic that Sac has been in front every single time, but they haven't had enough to finish these games against the Earthquakes, and showing that this is a true rivalry, between San Jose and Sacramento.
Right. The way that I interpret it is that USL teams or inferior teams come out with a lot of passion against these MLS sides, and it shows early on, like it did today, and like how it has in the past with Sac Republic going up against the Quakes. But the reason why they're not able to hold on to those leads, the reason why they're not able to lead, as the victors, is because of the depth, the difference, the disparity between those in USL in this case and those in MLS. The Quakes had 6, 7, 8 starters on the field today, opposed, to Sac Republic, who came in here, with somewhat of a deteriorated squad, a squad that's been playing game in and game out for rounds in the U.S. Open Cup, in addition to their actual tournament, or league, I should say. So, it's just the difference, though. It's the big money versus, the low-funded sides, and I think that's why it's always that, the USL uses that, that emotional, that passion to get through in the first couple of minutes, but at the end of the 90 minutes, it's always the big money, it's always the star power that pushes through the MLS side through the finish line. Doesn't always happen in that case, but that's the way that I interpret it for this Sac Republic and Quakes rivalry.
Let's talk about the way that the Quakes have kind of been using the Open Cup as a springboard for being serious about the year and turning everything around from the past couple of years. Chris Wondolowski in midweek said, "We want to win the Open Cup. We know it's 5 games to win it. We feel that this tournament tests your depth, and even today it shows where our depth is right now." How do you feel about that quote, and do you feel like he was right tonight about where the depth is? You saw, the likes of Calvillo in there, Affolter in the back line, Marco Lopez was back as well. You saw Cade Cowell come off of the bench. You saw a bunch of different stuff. Luis Felipe as well. Let's kind of just segue into how serious they're taking it and what worked in terms of the depth.
Right, exactly. I think it does attest to the depth of this team, and Chris Wondolowski is 100% on the money on that statement. Look, Francois Affolter, when he was brought in 2 years ago by Jesse Fiorinelli, was brought in to be a staple center back. He was brought in not with TAM money. He earns way less than the TAM salary, but he was brought in to be a game in and game out starter. He hasn't had much playing time this season. In addition to that, you have Vako Kazashvili, who is quote unquote the most expensive player in Quakes history, and for the past couple of months has been buried in the mix of players. He comes on as a substitute, not as a starter, but as a substitute against a Sac Republic side in the 4th round of the U.S. Open Cup. That is a luxury.
In the 65th minute, too.
That is a tremendous luxury that teams like Sac Republic don't have, and that is a testament to how deep this team is. And okay, don't get me wrong, they're not the deepest team in MLS, but I did say this a couple of episodes ago. They are deeper than most people give them credit for, or deeper than people will even bear to mention. No one has really mentioned the depthness of this team. They are quite deep. It showed today, and it's going to continue on through the stretch of the season.
Just a note, you guys that are tuning in, you can ask some questions. We'll take some questions at the end. This is a live interactive program, a live show. We are an inclusive show as well, and so we like to take your questions. Just a heads up, Alex Morgan, our colleague, is downstairs getting quotes from Matias Almeida and the players as well. He'll join us in a little bit. This game got off to quite an interesting start. 3 goals, I think, in the first 15 minutes.
Yep.
Sac opening the scoring, and then Eriksson answering that.
And then a free kick.
And then a free kick. It was just so crazy, the first half. And, you know, we were both tweeting proper cup tie. You know, I think that the feeling, the buzz was it could have been anyone's game,
right,
at the same time. But let's just chat about the beginning. Defensively, though, let's be fair here. You know, the Republic were breaking the lines of the Quakes, and we talked about this at halftime. And there were some adjustments in the double pivot positions in front of the back four. But Sacramento was having a lot of success in this first half to break down this Quakes side, and then they kind of made it.
Absolutely. They were slicing through it like butter. There was no cohesion whatsoever from the back line, and that is probably a result of, you know, starting Jungwirth with Affolter, 2 players that haven't really shared the field together this season. And in addition to that, I think the biggest red flag this game was the performances from Calvillo and from Luis Felipe. That youthful tandem did not work out whatsoever. Like you said, the Republic were just slicing right through them, getting by with 0 to no effort, and it hurt the Quakes at first. You know, I was mentioning this to a colleague, Alex Morgan, earlier. If it was another team, if it wasn't Sac Republic, if it was a team that probably boasted a better front line, they could have been up 4-1 in the first half, no problem. The Quakes were nowhere to be found. You know, the midfield was a complete disaster. They were disjointed, and the black line was completely soft. They were able to skim by them without any problems. Quakes were lucky in that sense. But then again, you know, they have those big players that, you know, show up in moments like these, and that was Magnus Eriksson today. That was Vako today. And that, at the end of the day, was the winning formula.
2-2 at the half. Tommy Thompson brought down. Espinosa scoring a wonderful penalty. And then Vako being brought on around the 65th-ish minute or so, and then scoring 2 goals, one in the 78th, one in the 90th minute. We'll go ahead and take a question here. We're going to get right into it. And I know he's been waiting for a while, and Joel Soria has a response for him. Ren 1018. Ren, you always ask very good questions. Studs and duds from this game. Let's flash that up on the screen. Basically, excuse me, I guess asking who you know we thought were good players, who we thought needs improvement. I'll start on my side here. For Sac Republic, I thought Bijev was fantastic. He scored a free kick. He was good off of the bat. He's a Bulgarian player, plays as a winger. I thought that Bijev was terrific. Always a joy to watch him play. I think he's a special player that can unlock another side. And I'm a little surprised he's not in Major League Soccer. I would say the goalkeeper, Cohen, had a little bit of issues in the back there for Sacramento for me. And then on the Quakes side, Vako for sure, stud for me. Just did everything in the second half and really controlled the game. It was actually nice to see Vako, who we talk about a lot on the show, who's kind of been in the dumps and hasn't been selected, and he's been the fall guy. And I'm not sure if his celebrations really, we'll talk about that when Alex gets here, but I don't know if his celebrations are meaningful enough. Does he care? Does he not?
He didn't celebrate. I didn't see a celebration from him at all.
Yeah, stud tonight. And then in the back line, Luis Felipe, I think, has more to do. He was then he went to the back line. I think
which was questionable because we've never seen that from Luis Felipe.
Yeah. So for me, those are those guys. So
I like Bijev. I like Bijev for Sac Republic, but I also like Jaime Villarreal, and he's a known player. He played for a couple of seasons over at the rival club LA Galaxy. I liked what I saw from him. I was thinking to myself, why isn't this guy in MLS? He should be a reserve player for an MLS team. Unfortunately, he's been with Sac Republic for the last couple of years. But I thought he had a decent showing. Not the flashiest player, but he connects that front line and that midfield quite well. For the Quakes, I thought obviously Vako deserves some lauds given the fact that he scored 2 goals, given the fact that he scored the game-winning goal as well. But I also like the work from Marcos Lopez. This is a player that came in with high expectations, really, really high expectations, not only from the fans, not only from the media, but from the front office themselves. They bet really high on Marcos Lopez, and the first couple of games he was a complete dud, missing in action, careless on the field, getting cards. At one point, I was brought up a question to one of our colleagues as well. I was asking, does Marco Lopez at this point have more cards than appearances? He has 4 cards and I believe 6 or 7 appearances now, so he's quite clear on that case. But he showed up today. He was showing his blistering speed on the field. He was connecting passes. He was comfortable on the ball. And this is what you're going to need from him. This is a player that, was expected to carry a huge load as a fullback, given the fact that the Quakes haven't had an actual left back in I don't know how many years now. Maybe you should know that. You were around here when they actually did have a fullback. But for the last couple of years, they've been absent in that sense. So positive from the Peruvian, who was left out of the Copa America, obviously rightfully so. He wasn't deserving of that whatsoever. But it's good, though. It's good. He's going to be able to recuperate from that. And the dud, I would say this tonight was definitely Eric Calvillo for me. He didn't warrant any positives. He was completely absent the center of the field. Him and Luis Felipe really struggled to connect passes, to distribute the ball, to change the ball from either side of the field. I didn't see him comfortable on the ball. He wasn't daring enough. He overall just did not have a bite. And I think that's why the Quakes suffered a lot the first half.
Let's take another question here from Sebi408. Sebi writes to us, what should San Jose take away from this going forward with the MLS competition? A good question and a lot to chat about, especially because the Open Cup can sometimes be a springboard for form in Major League Soccer and in the league. And also it can be kind of weird and you could pick up an injury here and there. But Joel, what do you make of that?
Yeah, well, we'll see who the Quakes draw on Thursday. The draw is going to be Thursday morning, and they will be taking on their next opponent next week, sometime next week. Nothing has been confirmed yet. But it's going to be a test. It's going to be a test for these Quakes. They are deeper than they are given credit for, but they do have certain absences that might hurt them. They don't have Nick Lima. They do have, Marcos Lopez, who's kind of shaping up and looks like he's more than ready to take that position on. But, you never know what's going to happen. You have LAFC who's running rampant. They can easily draw an LAFC. and that is bad news. You know, I'll forward that message to you guys. That is bad news. That is not someone you want to take on in order to advance to the round of 16, but that's what's going to need to be done. I mean, it could easily be an inferior side that they draw, and it just all depends. But with Matias Almeida in position now, I think the Quakes are really, really going to try and push for the cup.
Yeah, and you know, you heard Chris Wondolowski chat about it. They are taking it very seriously. You know, in league play, though, I've always felt in the last month to maybe 6 weeks, to maybe even 2 months, till that Seattle game, the 2-2 draw, this side in the league looks very confident, and they do look consistent to the point where, you know, we are talking about this 6, 7, you know, maybe 5, maybe even 4 or 3 playoff position. You know, my takeaway from this Open Cup game is just confidence. Confidence for players that don't usually see the field in Major League Soccer or that competition at all. Excuse me, the league play. In that competition at all. I think getting Calvillo out there, Luis Felipe out there, Cade Cowell out there, Vaco even getting some minutes. You know, even Tarbell, we'll get to the goalkeeping in a minute. There's a lot of questions coming in about that. But it's about confidence, and it's about getting minutes on the field. And you talked about the depth, Joel. And if this team is really deep, it's nice for them to get a trademark victory in front of a regional rivalry, in a cup competition right here at home.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to, you know, do the Quakes well in terms of confidence. You were talking about that. Right now, they are riding a good wave. You know, they've been having positive results, league play. They're a little deeper. They gave minutes to those players who were frustrated, those players who were, you know, who are seeking a transfer out of the club. And I'm talking about players like Francois Fulter. I know firsthand that he wants out of San Jose. He's been getting his minutes these past couple of weeks. Maybe that can change his mind, his perspective. And it helps on that aspect too, you know, the player management, right? Because a lot of these players, no offense, carry egos, and at times those egos get thin, they get irritated, and it makes it that much harder to manage within the locker room. So in that sense, this also does help tremendously.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Black and Azul. This is episode number 17, the Steve McManaman episode. I want to bring in our colleague Alex Morgan, who is downstairs at the press conference and also in the locker room a little bit. And Alex, we were just chatting about our initial reactions, who we thought, you know, were positive tonight and who needed some improvement tonight. But your overall takeaway from this Open Cup match?
Yeah, well, I was just downstairs talking to the Matias Almeida, the coach, and Chris Wondolowski as well, and I thought Wando described the game quite well. He said it was a character builder. They didn't execute the game plan as well as they would have hoped, and maybe you guys already talked about that a little bit. But in the end, they got the result. I think they were able to outlast Sacramento very well. Yesterday, they trained at this time in the heat, so they were able to withstand that. And I think they just generally, their quality shone through in the end.
We're going to take a question from Nathan Zaragoza. He said, after the recent gaffe from Vega in our match against FC Dallas, do you think the Quakes have anyone that could challenge for his consistent starting spot? I personally have loved Vega this year. And just a note, there's other questions about the goalkeeping position in here. We talk about Vega a lot on the show, and Andrew Tarbell hadn't had the best run of form last year, comes into this game, gives up 2 early goals. There was a little bit of some nerves and maybe some, you know, words exchanged, but I'll throw to you, Joel Soria. What do you think?
You know, I thought Tarbell did okay. You know, he had a decent showing. He was comfortable with the ball at his feet. I know in the past, what has been questioned of Andrew Tarbell's game is his ball distribution. It's not the best. Today, I think it passed with flying colors. There's no doubt about that. The last goal that the Quakes conceded wasn't his fault. He was at the right place. He made a tremendous save. The rebound was there for the Sac Republic player, and he put it in. And aside from that, I think throughout the 90 minutes, he had a decent showing. He had a couple of brilliant saves. He was able to, you know, put the Quakes in the driver's seat to win the game. I think Vega is still, though, the clear-cut starter for the Quakes. I know there's a lot of clamor about maybe changing that up, maybe bringing in JT Marcinkowski. Look, JT Marcinkowski is a undoubted, he's an undoubted talent. He's going to be a keeper, a generational keeper, but it's going to take time, and there's no reason to rush it right now when you have two goalkeepers who can definitely, do well within the two bars. And I don't think Tarbell is a through-and-through MLS starter by any means, but I think that he could do the job better than JT could do it now. And why put JT in the fire, when he's only in his early 20s? Give him time to develop with the youth U.S. men's national team. Give him time to develop a little bit more with Reno. Let him get more repetitions. Let him build that experience. And for now, you have a veteran like Vega, who, yes, commits errors at times, but is a good player, not only on the field, like I've said before, but also in the locker room. He's a confidence builder. He has a great relationship with Almeida, a great relationship with the coaching staff. And, through and through, he's an overall leader, which is good for this team.
Look, I think if you're going to give the starting spot to anybody else, it would be JT Marcinkowski, who could be the Quakes goalkeeper going forward for the future. But I think right now, what Matias needs to do, I agree, I think Matias right now needs to stand by Vega. I think he made 2 bad errors against Dallas on Saturday. But I think he's shown enough this season to warrant Matias's trust.
Do you think that Vega will feature in any Open Cup matches moving forward at all if the Quakes go deeper, potentially into a semifinal, final?
Well, they're limited, right? They only get 5 international players on the roster. That is definitely going to set them back. He takes up one of them. He doesn't have a green card, at least to my knowledge. Mm-hmm. So unless they're contending for a spot in the semifinal or in the final, I think in that case they will bring him off. But I think Almeida feels quite comfortable with Tarbell right now.
If you're just tuning in to Black and Azul, remember that you can always ask us some questions here on the side in the chat feature here on YouTube. Again, we want to take as many of your questions as possible, so keep them coming. The Quakes winning 4-3 tonight against Sacramento Republic FC, their 3rd win in a row against the capital rivals from up north in a very, very warm and hot Avaya Stadium, which it still is at this hour. Gilberto Hernandez writes, how many players are looking to transfer out of the club this summer? Complicated question. A lot of players on different contracts as well that might still need to run out in order to make all of that happen. But what do you think of that?
Well, I know of one for sure, and that's Affolter. I've had sources close tell me that he has been irritated with the lack of playing time and that he would like to play somewhere where he would be a fixture. He's not that currently with San Jose. Like I said, he's been getting a couple of minutes as of late. Maybe that changes his mind. Maybe he's willing to be complacent and say, you know what, I'm going to draw out the rest of the season. My contract is up in December anyways. Fresh start then. I walk out with my money. I get to live in San Jose for a little bit longer. I get to share this experience with this team. Maybe they go on and they win something important, and he's able to celebrate that with his teammates of the last couple of years. And the other one that's been kind of inkling around there is Aníbal Godoy. Aníbal Godoy certainly has interest from teams in Mexico, certainly has interest from other teams around the globe. And he's going to have a major tournament in the Gold Cup that's starting up next week. Eyes are on him for sure. I haven't gone to the bottom of the rumors, but if I do, which I think I will shortly, I will make sure to report that.
Look, and I think Godoy has come under a lot of fire from fans throughout his time with the Quakes, but I think that at this point, he's critical to the Quakes midfield. We've seen over these last 2 games that against Dallas and tonight, that without Godoy
they don't have
in the
anyone
middle,
to replace him.
The Quakes don't have a rock there. Tonight it was Calvillo and Fernandez in the middle, and at the start, for sure, they were completely overrun. I would have liked to have seen better performances from them too.
Wonder when Danny will be fit again. Hopefully Quakes get a defender and a striker like a Gordon or a Lenhart this summer. But I'm guessing we only get one player, writes Emmanuel TWR. We talk about this, every other week, maybe every third week, but shopping list-wise for specific positions on the field, I think, is what Emmanuel is alluding to here.
Well, I can speak to
ahead.
the first part of the question. The latest news on Danny is that he has a hamstring injury and he's hoping to return at the end of the Gold Cup break. That's what we're hearing from the Quakes spokespeople.
And that goes to Shea Salinas as well, who's also injured at the moment.
And Alex, you know, certain positions on the field may need some depth, or you know, certain players kind of transferring out. Where would be your kind of first different areas to kind of uproot and put in a couple players?
We've talked about it before on the show. I think if you're going to go sign a big DP player, it needs to be in that number 10 role. Magnus Eriksson has been solid, but if you're going to splash some cash on a DP player, that's where you do it.
And the team confirmed it, by the way. For those of you watching, Sports Illustrated conducts an annual ambitious list where they asked every team in the league a certain amount of questions, particular questions, and the Quakes did confirm to SI that they are looking to add a third DP this summer. I know firsthand that the Quakes are looking to sign a defender. Osvaldo Alanis sounds like it's off. They were tracking an Argentine center back. I was not able to get his name, but they are looking for a center back this summer as well.
Is Vaco's current form going to make a difference in whether the Quakes keep him or not? Very important question comes in from D2 Design here, and just if you guys are just tuning in now, Vaco, the difference maker in this match, 2 goals in the last 15 minutes of the game, one on the 78th minute mark, one on the 90th minute mark, kind of being that spark in that number 10 role. It looked kind of mint vintage Vaco 2017 in a way. Yeah. And, you know, doing his thing in the summer heat right here, 5th round of the U.S. Open Cup.
Look, I think Vaco needs to signal his commitment to Matias's vision. And he does that in 2 parts. There's scoring goals, which is important, and he got 2 of them tonight. But I think it's also his defense, showing that he's willing to work. Matias's system requires a lot of defensive pressure. And thus far, Vaco hasn't shown that he's been willing to put in that work to fill that spot. So I think that's the big part of the equation, if Vaco is willing to put his head down and work hard for Matias.
He's going to have to do it in the regular season, though, as well. He was able to do it against the Sacramento side that is obviously a step below MLS, that was all obviously depleted, exhausted in the late minutes of this hot, tepid game. He's going to have to do it consistently in MLS. He's not going to get the start. It's going to take time for him to get starts. I expected for him to start today. He didn't get it. And I think that is a testament of the relationship between him and Matias Almeida. I don't think Almeida's convinced fully. This definitely garnered him some points. This is definitely going to boost his stock, but I don't think he's quite there yet. He still needs to continue to show his commitment. I still think that he needs to speak to us, to the media, which he hasn't done in over a year. He really, really needs to show that, hey, you know what, Jesse, you did the right thing by signing me as your DP.
Even tonight, he scored 2 goals. He's not speaking to us as a media, and that's just part of his personality. He's a very reserved, shy character, and I think in some regards that comes through in his play on the field as well.
Right, but when your image is on the line,
exactly,
and you need to voice yourself, you do that. You make yourself do it. Whether your English is fluent or not, you show up and you talk to the cameras, you talk to the people, you make it known that, hey, I like where I'm at. I like the life that I'm having right now, and I like playing soccer and like scoring goals for the San Jose Earthquakes. He hasn't done that. He's scoring the goals, but he's not doing anything else.
Yeah, and perhaps you know, it also comes through in the celebration as well. You can see the celebration very muted, very chill, just a nice little smile. Doesn't really want a lot of plaudits or a lot of attention either. Gilberto Hernandez once more. What change to the formation made the difference? More of a tactical-based question. I think when Vaco came on, that was a difference because Magnus Eriksson actually played in a double pivot position, defensive midfield, alongside Calvillo in front of the back 4, which allowed the Quakes central midfield to win the ball easier. And given the fact that Sacramento was tired in the heat, after they had their leads that were relinquished and the Quakes were able to score, I think for me that made the difference. And I talked about this maybe on the first or second show, but Magnus Eriksson sometimes can be quite dynamic. Since he's not a very pacey guy, he could sit in front of the back four and hang out with another likely, like-minded defensive midfield player who may be a better tackler than him. But Magnus Eriksson's a physical player, can win the ball, good passing, and sometimes that's what you do when you want to hide a player that's not very quick or very fast. And for me, I actually really enjoyed seeing Magnus Eriksson in front of the back four, the bank of the back four, with another holding midfield player. Any kind of notes on this, guys?
Yeah, I'll add. I thought Vako made an impact, of course, but I think another stat that I saw being thrown around on Twitter was that the Quakes have played Sacramento 3 times in the Open Cup. All 3 times, Sacramento have scored the first goal and then gone on to lose. I think a part of that is because Sacramento come out in these games with high pressure, and that's hard to sustain for a full 90 minutes. And I think that's part of what we saw tonight. They weren't able through the heat to outlast the Quakes.
I really like the spark that Cade Cowell provided when he came on. I thought he was able to stretch the field quite well, really disjoint the Sac Republic back line with his pace, with his ability on the ball as well, was able to get a couple of shots in there. I was impressed by the 15-year-old. I thought he was a good, spice to this match.
And to add one more thing, I think another thing that made an impact, Wondolowski talked about it in his post-match meeting with reporters. He said that Matthias really got into the players at halftime. And Matthias takes this competition seriously, and I think as such, he was grilling his players.
Eriksson moving into the double pivot, Vako being the difference maker, Cade Cowell as well being a difference maker as a winger, Danny Miller on the PA, who also does the PA for the Sharks, really built that up when Cade Cowell came into the match too, and the fans loved it. And there's one thing that fans really truly enjoy is seeing youngsters get into the fold, and that's what an Open Cup game is really for, to play players that don't usually feature in the starting 11, and then also play your youth and show what you're building from your youth as well. Yes.
One thing that I would add, Wondolowski talked about it a little bit, is that in the past, coaches use the Open Cup as a way to get young players minutes on the field. He said there's one difference with Matthias, and that he already focuses that much attention to the players who aren't in the starting lineup. So given that he's already given them the attention, there isn't really as much of a need to get them into the fold because he's already paying close attention to them. So he says the players that were working the hardest, that's something that Matthias was talking about in the post-match press conference, are the players that he's going to reward on the field.
Jose M. Sorry, I thought it was Jose Mourinho for a minute. Jose M. No accent. Sorry, just had to throw that out there. Said, "What do y'all think of Haji? I thought he looked all right at the weekend when he came on, but not as good today." We, as a group, talked about Haji at halftime. I didn't feel like he had the best first half. Poor touches on the ball, looked nervous, didn't look so sharp. But in the second half, he had a nice spell out there on the left and had a couple of chances as well. But his performance for you, Alex?
I would agree with that analysis. I can't remember a possession that Haji had in the first half that went well. His touch was too long, his decision-making was poor, he was holding on to the ball too long. But I agree that in the second half, he had a couple of shots on target, and he made more of an impact in the second half, and hopefully we'll be able to see more of the second half Haji going forward.
Yeah, collectively the Quakes had a resurgence in the second half. They were able to really just find themselves and were in better tune. The first half, Haji was a bit too slow. He wasn't up to par to the speed of the game. He wasn't really taking on players one-on-one. He wasn't able to get by players one-on-one. He wasn't able to exploit the position he was in completely. Reason why in the first half, Matias Almeida had him and Espinosa switch sides, and even then it really didn't work. I think it was that grilling that you were talking about in halftime in the locker room that really, picked up all the players' speed.
Well, it is the summer, and it is time for barbecues, so grilling probably worked really well there. Final question comes in from Jose, not Jose, Jose. Is Almeida's formation and form of play too predictable? This is going to be a kind of a can of worms question, just so everyone knows before we get into it. Alex Morgan.
I would say no. I would say that it's actually fairly adaptable. We've seen them play really, really tight on their marks, but we've also seen them play with a little more space and switching off on their marks more. I thought today was one of those matches.
Today was very, very loose, and you know, they were a bit flexible today. And I think what says about that is the fact that you had, for instance, a player like Luis Felipe start in the double pivot and then get sacrificed to being a center back. We've never seen Luis Felipe play as a center back. We had never really seen Chris Wondolowski open up on the right side and have Vako slot in the center position. These are certain, you know, tweaks and adjustments that we haven't seen before from Almeida. And I think he was a bit southpaw today. He was a bit unorthodox. He was trying to switch it up. So I think in that aspect, a bit more flexible for
and
sure.
I agree in that I think a lot of it depends on the personnel that they have. They have two strikers going forward. Well, right now Danny's injured, but to have both Danny and Wondolowski, that provides you two different ways of attacking. And I think the personnel will be the key to getting that tactical flexibility, and that could also be where the third DP comes in.
Yeah, I mean, I think the formation stays the same. The personnel obviously is different. The style of play and the form of play is you know how they're going to play. So if that's predictable, I guess that's the predictable part of the question. But they seem to be getting better and better every week, week in, week out. It is modern football. It is a high-pressing game, and any of the front three can really do their thing. Once they get into the final third, they can move all over the place and create chances for another player. And I like that, and I like to see that. This team was not very mature in the attacking third when it kind of first came together in the beginning of the year, but now they're really doing much better. Goals from midfield. You understand Vako scoring goals now. Wondo obviously doing well, and Espinosa back in the side is always going to do wonders as well as the top winger on this team with Shea Salinas, who's also a top winger. So good question. Their final thoughts, guys, from tonight.
Well, I think the next couple weeks will be interesting. The Quakes will play in the Open Cup again next week, and then they'll have another week off for MLS and the Gold Cup. So I think there'll be a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and we'll do our best to keep you guys updated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's going to be a couple of moving pieces in the weeks to come, so definitely have to keep an eye on that. The Quakes are going to have no time to rest. We thought they were going to. If they were to lose this game, they didn't. They were able to hold on. They survived. They're going to be taking on another opponent in the 5th round. Interesting times, though. Summertime always calls for change. There's going to be change, whether it's players leaving or players arriving, but there's certainly going to be change, so stay tuned for that.
We are Black and Azul. We appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. By tuning into this broadcast, you help grow the game in your community right here in the Bay Area and the United States. Appreciate that very much. Our producer, Jason Sholl, our assistant producer, Aaron Sholl, Alex Morgan, Joel Soria, Charles Wollin with you from a very warm Avaya Stadium. The final score from San Jose tonight: San Jose 4, Sacramento Republic 3. The Quakes on to the next round. Cheers, and we will see you next week for episode number 18. Take care. Have a good night.